We have doubled the size of our garden this year. We're trying to be self-sufficient, or at least as close as we possibly can be, and we needed a bigger garden in order to do that. So I want to take you on a tour of our entire garden today, show you what we've gotten done the past couple weeks, show you what we're working on still, and talk about everything we've got planted in here, because this has been the most amount of food I've planted in my entire life. So I'll start off in the area above my bigger greenhouse. So this area was all a lawn a couple weeks ago, and it's since been turned into these monstrous raised beds that we have. It's one bed that goes all the way along our fence here, sort of the fence of our garden. And this has some squash, cucumbers, all of our vines that are going to climb this fence and use the fence as a trellis. And there's also a lot of cabbage, some celery, a bunch of flowers, tomatoes, everything else mixed in there. And then the rest of these beds are potatoes. They're starting to poke through their mulch, so I have to get another layer on top, but they're looking really healthy, really green. So I'm excited to get all of those potatoes harvested. I ordered a couple 100 pounds of seed potatoes this year, and then we cut them in half. I vastly underestimated how much that was going to be. So I'm about halfway through the potato beds that I need to build for this year. So hopefully we can get a huge harvest of those and not have to buy seed potatoes again. The ridge right along the greenhouse here, this is all planted with some fruit bushes that showed up when we were building the garden. We have a marionberry, a blackberry, a honeyberry, another honeyberry, and then 3 honeyberry cuttings that we took off of the ones from our orchard. Honeyberries are one of our favorite fruits, and we want to start having them here close by the greenhouse so we can start propagating them. So in my greenhouse, we have these 2 raised beds here. They're both filled with peppers. I'm gonna build 2 more raised beds on the other side of this greenhouse, about the same size as these 2. Once everything's set up and planted, then I'm able to move on to other projects. But once those beds are built, I have my next batch of pepper seedlings that I'm gonna get planted. I'm gonna be getting a ton of peppers very soon out of these greenhouses. Same thing with tomatoes, everything's starting to come in. And I can't wait, because peppers are my personal favorite, and we're gonna be doing a bunch of salsa. In the other greenhouse, we have 3 beds filled with peppers and tomatoes. And I just got the tomatoes pruned and trellised recently, and everything's looking good in here. So my raised beds out here, we have a lot of stuff looking good. A lot of stuff didn't germinate on the first run, so we got that all mulched and replanted recently, so those should be coming up any day now. So there's more tomatoes and peppers mixed in out here. We have a couple bean beds at the back that are gonna be using our fence as a trellis, an entire bed of onions, some cabbage, Brussels sprouts, more tomatoes. And then we have our beds up front here with radish, carrots, and lettuce that we just put some shade cloth on. And these are already starting to produce for us a little bit. Very close to getting a harvest of carrots, and we've already gotten a bunch of radishes. That's about the first half of my garden, and this other half has what I've been primarily focused on over the past couple weeks, and it's come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. So this was all lawn, and it was kind of similar plans to what I did in front of our greenhouse, to where we want to put some raised beds in here, put wood chips down in between, paper on top of the grass. This bed right here is what we call our mega bed, and it's over 30 feet. I think it's closer to 40 feet. It's all full of tomatoes right now, and I made 2 beds that are about the same size as that. I ran a bed right here parallel the whole exact length of mega beds, so now I have 2 giant raised beds over here, and then behind mega bed I put another giant raised bed that goes the opposite way to kind of section off this area. So I'm going to try to turn as much of this green area between our hugelkultur right here and the beds that I just made into growing area, but I should still be able to fit a bunch more raised beds in here and get the rest of my potatoes in the ground. And probably the most exciting development over the past week or so has been this area in the very corner of my fenced-in garden space. So we've had this giant bed right here. This was always our divider between like our growing space and then area we wanted to eventually expand into. The initial plan for that area was to put a tarp on it to kill the grass, and I was going to work up the ground a little bit with one of the digging forks that we have, and then go through and rake everything and plant in that way. But with the lack of rainfall that we've had this year, to that area never being touched or anything before, everything was just too compressed, too hard, and it was just too much of a task to go through and attempt to loosen up all of that soil. But yeah, we actually had someone come over and till up this area for us. I recently just got this entire area planted, and it's all devoted towards growing food for my chickens. This long side of this area is painted mountain corn, and the majority of the remaining space is sunflower, and there's a pretty big size sorghum and millet patch sprinkled in there. We're excited to be growing food for our chickens. We're gonna have close to 40 hens here pretty soon. I wanted to get a lot more this year to put them to work and start using them more in my homestead. So being able to potentially grow a lot of their feed, along with giving them space to free range. It should really cut down on a lot of costs over time to keep the chickens. We prefer not tilling, and that's why we're going through so much effort to put in raised beds everywhere. We want to build soil over time instead of having to till areas every single year. I think it was a good move this time because we're getting later into our already short growing season, so we wanted to get everything just taken care of and done right away. There was a lot of rocks in there and it was just real hard ground, so going through and tilling it once we thought would be okay for the long run. And now we really want to start building that soil, and hopefully I can just use my chickens to do it. I'm going to put them in here in the fall when this garden's all done for the year, and then I want them on there in the spring right away to prep that area, drop a bunch of nitrogen everywhere, and hopefully I don't have to till it again, and it'll be easier to plant, and we can start adding a bunch of nutrients into it and start building the soil up. And in the side of our grain area here, we put some logs around one of these big tree stumps that was out here, and I threw some soil in here and I planted a bunch of wildflowers. So this should be a pretty good sized wildflower bed in the back corner of my garden on the edge of their woods here. So that'll be cool, it'll look awesome, hopefully attract a bunch of pollinators. I'm also gonna put another wildflower patch in front of the greenhouse right here, and have a tarped off area by my blueberries about 200 yards maybe in the woods that way. We've been really busy out here. We have a lot of plants looking really good, and hopefully we should be getting some pretty substantial harvest here soon. I'm getting radishes and we have some honeyberries that are ripe. So between that and the eggs that we get and the venison and chicken we have in the freezer from last year, we're eating a lot off of our land right now. And with our expansion of our garden to the point where it's at now, we should be putting a lot of food away for us and for our animals.